Good morning. Well, the good news that I have to report today is that just like last year, my staff still will not give me my passwords so I can do Twitter all night long. It really is a privilege for me to be here to talk to you about some of the great things going on in this building. I know that the two chairmen of appropriations did a great job outlining some of the challenges that they face. One of the things that I've liked to do over the last year as I've read some of the reporting that's come out of the financial situation the state's in is to try to put it in a form where most everyone can understand. Because I believe, as you've heard me say, that we have three primary goals in state government to ultimately accomplish what has to be our ultimate goal, which is we must improve the amount of jobs in our state. Job creation must be our #1 priority, and to do that, we must continue to do three things. We got to have a fiscally responsible government. If we're going to see job creation, we've got to have a tax code that is fair, one that is flat, one that encourages economic development, not one that discourages it. And the third thing that we must do if we're going to see long-term economic growth and prosperity in Mississippi is we must improve the educational attainment level of our citizens. Well, as we look to each of those three items, we've done a number of things in the last 6 years, and we'll continue to work with our friends and counterparts in the House to continue along those efforts. But I want to begin by talking about being fiscally responsible. One of the things that your leaders in this building, along with Governor Bryant, have decided is we're simply not going to spend money that we do not have. The fact of the matter is, when I came in January of 2004, we inherited a budget that the previous year, the legislature had spent $712 million in one-time money on recurring expenses. It literally took us over 10 years to get out of that budget hole, because what you know as local small business men and women is that you can spend more than you make for a week. You might can do it for a month, but you can't do it year after year after year and it becomes sustainable. And so we made the decision that we're simply not going to spend money we don't have. Well, if you've read any of the local newspapers in the last year and a half, and the reporting, the way in which evidently they define government finance is as follows. Imagine for just a second for me that you run a state agency. And imagine that in the current fiscal year, your state agency spends $1. Imagine that this year your agency is spending $1. Now imagine that we start the budget process, which by the way is about a 9-month process for us in Mississippi. We start sometime in August. We complete it usually in early April. And so imagine that we start the budget process and you sit around and you decide that the mission that your agency provides is critically important. And because your mission is critically important, that you're going to come to the legislature and ask next year, not for the $1 that you're spending this year, but ask for $1.25. Well, as we go through the budget process, understand that no one ever gets everything that they want, but let's just assume that the Appropriations Committee chairman that just spoke make a decision that the mission that you provide is critically important, and so they do want to increase your year-over-year spending authority. And imagine that they decide that although you're spending $1 this year, they're going to appropriate for you $1.10 to spend next year. Now, just fast forward and pretend that you're actually operating in year 2 when you're appropriated $1.10, and understand that revenues are continuing to grow, but they're not growing at a level as fast as the budget experts had projected. And because revenues are not growing at the level that they had projected, imagine that the governor, because he's required to by statute, has to come in the middle of the year and reduce your ability to spend from $1.10 to $1.05. Now, according to the Clarion Ledger and others, your state agency just took a 20% budget cut. Because after all, they asked for $1.25, and you're only going to spend $1.05. As many of you know, my family runs a small heating and air conditioning business in Pearl, Mississippi, and what I'll tell you, in the way in which we budget in our small business, you didn't just get a 20% budget cut, you just got a 5% year-over-year increase in your ability to spend. My friends, there is a difference between budget cuts and spending cuts. There is a difference in your small businesses. There is a difference in government as well. And the fact of the matter is, if you look at spending in our state from FY 2010 till FY 2018, the year that we're currently in, we're going to spend almost $400 million more on education in our state than we did the year before I was lieutenant governor, because we believe very strongly, as I mentioned earlier, that a key component to seeing long-term growth and economic prosperity in our state is we must improve the educational attainment level of our citizens. And so we're investing in public education at all levels, but we also believe that just investing and doing nothing else and expecting different results is not what we must do. In fact, we have done things in the last 6 years to provide for more options for our kids in our state, whether it be public charter schools, education savings accounts for students with special needs, or everything from working with your leadership to ensure that we have appointed school superintendents, not elected school superintendents in Mississippi. You know, when I first got elected, we had 150 elected school superintendents in America, and over half of them lived in Mississippi. Now, if we were in the upper quartile or the upper decile of performance, that might be okay, but we're not. And we took an issue that MEC has been supporting for 20 or 25 years, and we actually, with the majorities, were able to pass it and get it done. Not only have we changed the school governance in many school districts across the state, we've also reduced the number of school districts in Mississippi. When we first started, there were 152. Today, there are less than 140 once all of the bills are fully implemented. Now, so we've reduced by 13 the number of school districts. Now, some of you are probably saying, hey, 13 in 6 years, that ain't that good. I don't totally disagree with you. I just ask you to consider the fact that in the 30 years before I became lieutenant governor, the Mississippi legislature mandated consolidation of exactly 0 school districts in 30 years. And you may say, well, why are you consolidating school districts? It's pretty simple. We believe that the best way for every kid to get a quality education is for there to be a quality teacher in every classroom. And the best way for there to be a quality teacher in every classroom is to spend more money in the classroom and less money in the district office. And we're beginning to see some success in those school district consolidations, where you're seeing more money being directed to the classroom, and you're also seeing improvement in overall quality of the opportunities that kids are getting in our state. The fact of the matter is, you know, our former governor used to always say, one thing that is tried and true about the press is they never cover airplanes that land safely. I hadn't spent a lot of time writing about the fact that our graduation rate in Mississippi has improved over 12 percentage points in the last 6 years. You hadn't seen a lot of articles about it, but it's critically important because we need to give credit where credit is due. And the credit isn't due in this building, by the way. All we did is raise the level of expectations. All we did is raise the level of expectations, but Mississippi administrators, Mississippi teachers, Mississippi parents, and most importantly, Mississippi kids have risen up and met those increased expectations. In fact, I mentioned graduation rates earlier. The year before I ran, high school graduation rates in America were 82.3%. In Mississippi, they were 70.5% high school graduation rates. We were over 12 points below the national average. Last year, the national average had risen by 0.9%. It had gone from 82.3 to 83.2%. In Mississippi, our graduation rate has risen from 70.5 to over 82%. We are now less than 1 percentage point below the national average. Now, I will admit the national average is not good enough, nor should that be our goal. But if we can continue on the same trajectory, within the next year or two, we'll actually exceed the national average. Not only are we seeing improvement at the high school level, we're also seeing our fourth grade reading and fourth grade math testing on NAEP. The results improve. They're improving in large part because of the third grade reading gate, or the Literacy Promotion Act. The Literacy Promotion Act says you cannot be promoted from the third to the fourth grade unless you can read at a certain level. And one of the things that you're going to see me push for in the coming years is to continue to raise that bar. Continue to raise the bar of what it takes to be able to move from the third to fourth grade, because although we've seen improved results, in fact, a couple years ago, the most recent results that I've seen, our Mississippi was the only state in the nation that saw both significant and marked improvement in both fourth grade reading and fourth grade math results. In fact, students that year that were considered economically disadvantaged scored at the national average. Again, at the national average isn't good enough relative to their peers, but that was the best relative performance Mississippi kids have ever experienced. And so what I want to leave you with today is the fact, and it is a fact, that we are seeing improved results. We've tried to move our conversation away from one of inputs to one of outcomes. Because at the end of the day, it's how well those kids are performing that's going to decide how well they do in life, but also how strong our economy is. And so as we work over the next 3 months with our friends and counterparts in the House, as well as Governor Bryant, to continue to try to make a difference in our state. And we have many challenges, just like virtually every other state in the nation has many challenges. I do believe that coming off 2017, our bicentennial year, our 200th year as a state, and I said this all over the state last year, and I'm going to continue to say it. While I recognize, and we should all recognize, that we have a very complicated history, we as Mississippians need to spend a lot less time apologizing and a lot more time bragging about the good things that are going on in our state. Now, as we push forward and work with your leadership, and congratulations to Scott, by the way. Congratulations. We look forward to working with him in the coming years in his new position. And I know he'll do a fantastic job representing your interest in this building and throughout the state. But as we do that, may we continue to work together to make Mississippi an even better place to invest capital, an even better place to create jobs, and yes, an even better place to raise a family. If that will be at the heart of all of our decisions, I'm convinced that Mississippi will continue to see great improvement. And I think that's something all of us, Republicans and Democrats and Mississippians from all walks of life, can agree on. That should be our ultimate goal.